Welcome. Welcome to the Lightkeepers Lightcast, the program where we meet with leaders who are quietly keeping our world together. With us today is Rana Dajani. And Rana, we want to start with you immediately. We welcome you to this Lightcast. And my first question to you is, we know that you are a professor, you are an author, you are an activist, you are a social entrepreneur, you are a biologist, you are many things. If you were to briefly introduce yourself to the people who are listening to you, and maybe some of them haven't known about the great work that you've been doing, introduce yourself professionally, but also as a human being, what would you say?
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure. And assalamu alaikum, peace upon you all. That's how we greet people in my part of the world. When I introduce myself, I like to say, first of all, that I'm a human being. I'm a global citizen. We belong all to this earth that takes care of us, and we take care of her, he, it, whatever people want to call it. But when I introduce myself, I like to say that I wear 5 scarves as representation of the multiple roles that I play. People talk about wearing different hats. I talk about wearing different scarves. And the first one is that I'm a mother. I have 4 children. And to me, that's the most important role that any human being can play by taking care of the next generation. My second scarf is that I'm a teacher, educator. I was a school teacher for 10 years, and now I'm a university professor. And I think teaching and education is the second most important role any human being can play after being a parent, because the children, if they're not at home, they're at school. And the importance of the teacher molding and inspiring future generations can never be underestimated. The third one, I'm a scientist. I study genetics and epigenetics of ethnic populations and the impact of trauma on vulnerable communities. And my fourth one, I'm a social entrepreneur. I started a program called We Love Reading, changing mindsets through reading to nurture change makers, that has spread to 77 countries around the world. And my last one is I'm an activist defending human rights wherever they are. And in today's world, it is about defending Gaza and Palestine because of the atrocities and the genocide that is happening.
That is really fantastic, and thank you very much for this introduction. The question that I want to ask you is, you know, uh, from our reading about you, you grew up in a house without a television, but with a lot of conversations, largely with your father. And if you are able to put your finger on the moment that you discovered that you had something in you, a light, a purpose, something that is not only for you, but the world beyond you. When was that? It could be a moment, it could be a stage in life. If you could tell us a little bit about that, that would be fantastic.
Wow, that's a very deep question. So, and I think it wasn't a moment. It was a realization after the matter. I think that's how it came to be. I want to add to not just growing up, having conversations and reading a lot, which expands the imagination, but also being with my mother was the one who was taking care of not just the house but the community, the neighborhood. And so that was inspirational as well. So I think the combination of intellectual, curiosity driven conversations with no red tape on any question you ask, as well as the sense of caring and responsibility for the people around you, that kind of always in the back of my mind, that I wanted to have an impact. And not for the fame of it, but for the sense of responsibility, that we are here on this earth for a certain time, and we have energy, capacity, skills, whatever, resources. What can we do with them to make the world a better place? So whether it was, and of course it was very, let's say, embedded in science, because I had this scientific background from my father, who was a physician and a scientist. So I was thinking, how can I, help the world? How can I help humanity while having fun discovering nature's mysteries? I wanted to become, at some point, I was interested not just in biology, but also in astronomy. Those were my two kind of passions. But of course, where I was growing up in Jordan, I was not going to end up being an astronaut. Or although, by the way, I realized later that you're because well, not just because I was in Jordan, but I'm very short-sighted, and I thought that you have to have perfect, physical capacities, but it turned out you don't really have to. And I thought, oh, I'm too old now. But we'll put that aside. But the other thing is, I wanted to be an explorer in nature. I wanted to go down to the deepest trench. I wanted to go to the Amazon. I wanted to go to Antarctica because I read a lot of National Geographic as well. But again, that was too far. So I think what happened is that all these passions and aspirations ended up with me trying to explore what's inside a cell, because there's a lot of mysteries there, but it's more doable to dip into that and try to understand. But at the same time, if we understand how cells work, we can actually help humanity. And that's also why I didn't become a physician, by the way. Although the tradition was, oh, you're a daughter of a physician, you're the eldest, you're smart. In my part of the world, obviously, you're going to become a physician. And I decided not to. I was scared that I would harm somebody by mistake, and I couldn't live with that. And I thought, if something happens to mice or cells, I can sleep at night. That's okay. And so I thought, but being a scientist is better than being a physician, because you are actually finding out the reasons behind disease. And then the physician just takes my discoveries and does something with them. So that's why. So I became a scientist. That was the first stage of my life. So I don't know if that's and talk about the light. I don't think there's one light. I think there's multiple lights that keep turning on as you go throughout your life. So I think that was the first light of wanting to be a scientist. But probably the manifestation of the light would come much later, in my 30s, when I came back to Jordan after my PhD. And I was a scientist at the university. I set up my lab. I was doing my research and finding the right scientific question. But I think, and that was great and fun and very inspiring. But I think the light came and that happens when you change situations, change countries. You come back and you think, oh my God, you see things you didn't see before, things you should have appreciated, which you didn't in the past, and things you realize need fixing. And I think that's when it hit me that children don't read for fun, and how reading for fun is what made me who I am, who gave me that wild imagination, who gave me the courage to go against expectations. And to me, that's when I thought I have to do something about this. So I think that's when that light kind of lit, or the spark happened.
Now, this is really fascinating, Rana, and to be very honest with you, when I was researching and reading about you, the thing that really stood out to me was that work with children. I thought this is like just an amazing thing. And some of these things are, I don't know, they come in an easy way or a difficult way or challenging way. Uh, did you have any doubts, or did people around you or with you had doubts that you could really have that impact that you wanted? Because people may say, well, you could help one or two children, but there are millions of them who needs to be read too. So were there any doubts, whether internal or external?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So and this was like a thought process, right? Of these kids don't read. Why they don't read? Because again, I'm the scientist, so I'm kind of analyzing the problem, and I realize it's because they don't have a role model to help them fall in love with reading. Because in Jordan, in particular, it was a great case that everybody knows how to read. So the reason isn't lack of literacy, which would be the obvious reason in other contexts. And so because of the unique context of Jordan, I was able to kind of nuance or parse it and put my finger on this love of reading that is lacking. And so I thought, okay, what do I do? I mean, I read to my kids and they love to read, but that's where that sense of responsibility that I gained from my mother, that's not enough. Knowledge, when I say gain from my mother, we were brought up as Muslims, and part of our faith was you take care of your community. You are responsible, and if you have knowledge, if you have a skill, if you have something, you can't just keep it. You have to share it. You have to do something with it. And it's just that feeling of responsibility, like, oh, I got to do something with this. So what do I do? And I thought, do I tell the government to pass a law that every parent should read aloud to their children? I mean, in Jordan, we have a law that you're not allowed to smoke, and everybody smokes. So forget about laws. Do I knock on everybody's door? I mean, that's not practical. I teach, I have kids. It doesn't work. And I thought, you know what? This feeling of responsibility was just gnawing on me. And I thought, I'm going to gather the kids in my neighborhood and read aloud to them. And that's it. I don't care if it's what people say. I have to do this. It's the sense of responsibility. Now, and I said I'm not going to do it in my home, because what if the neighbor doesn't like my mother-in-law, who, by the way, I live with? So I thought, we'll do a public space so everybody can come. And that's when I chose to do it in the mosque, which is right behind my house. I can do it there. It's open. It's empty. There's a carpet. There's a bathroom. We're talking kids. And of course, I drew this knowledge of children because I was a school teacher, like I said, for 10 years before I did my PhD. And so, and when I started, of course, it was a family thing. So I didn't do it alone. I told my husband, I told my kids, hey, we're going to do this project together. Again, this is something I learned being when I was growing up, because I'm one of 8 girls. So we had a family, and I was the eldest. So it was always a group project. It was a family project, whatever we did, activities in our everyday life. So they were part of this brainstorming, thinking how we're going to do it, what does it look like, and so on. So it was a fun project. But when I started, people started telling me, and who do you think you are? Do you think you're going to change these children? They're going to go back home. It's their parents. It's the environment in their homes. You're not going to make a difference by reading once a week for these kids. But what kept me going is like that sense of responsibility. And another thing I learned from my upbringing and my faith and culture is that you're not responsible for the results. You're responsible to make an effort, to try. And that is so freeing, because then I don't have to feel bad. It's just, I have to do it and try. And I don't have to worry about, how many people are coming. Is it going to succeed? Or that's not up to me. And the combination of responsibility and that I just have to try, and I'm not responsible for the results, it kind of paved the path to make it easier for me to actually do it. And I thought, so I want to do it because it makes me feel I can sleep at night. And it worked. It worked. And every time somebody says, I get my self-doubts, like, is it really working? Are these children changing? And then I get a story from one of our Wheel of Reading ambassadors who's reading in South Africa, or in Venezuela, or in Vietnam. And it's like, yes, it does. And it's like, and it's so profound to think that a simple idea can make a difference.
Yeah.
And what is the recipe for that?
Fantastic, fantastic. This is really nice. And on that note, I'll be handing you over to Yekemi to continue.
Yeah, I've just been in awe listening to your story, and your passion just comes right through, Rana. Just sticking with We Love Reading, can you describe that moment where you made the decision to act? Because in our society, many of us, we see things that we feel are not quite right. We want it to change, but not everyone actually does something about it and takes that step to act. Can you talk about that moment where you actually decided, I'm not going to just watch this, I'm going to do something about it?
Yeah, I think that moment of realization that I'm going to do something about it is repeated many times in the different endeavors that I do. But I'll focus on We Love Reading. But that same feeling, that same inside chemistry, happens again and again. But every time it's profound. It's not something you learn once and then you keep doing it. It's you have to reach this stage, kind of maturation of that feeling inside, that feeling of responsibility, that feeling that I cannot be quiet. I need to do something about it. That has to mature every time it happens again. So to me, it was, I think, what allowed it to mature to the stage of action was this deep belief, deep belief that if you don't read for fun, if you don't get lost in a novel, if you you will lose your inner potential and discovering yourself. And that's a crime to me for a child. And you will lose learning about the whole world around you. And that's a crime as well. And that deep, profound feeling of that this is a crime. And if I don't do it, I will be responsible for all the children in the world. That kind of pushed me. It's like, I got to do something about it. And that's when I started, and I gathered the kids, and then suddenly things just started opening. And it happens every time. And I think this is the philosophy. It's like when you burn all your bridges, when you have the courage to burn all your bridges, suddenly everything happens. But when you're finding excuses and you keep holding on to all these threads that keep you weigh you down, you never move forward. So and what makes you burn the bridge or cut the thread or whatever, to step out, is that intense feeling of responsibility, and intense feeling you're like, if I don't do it, nobody else is doing it, and I got to do it. I just have to do it, and I don't care what happens.
I really resonate with that sense of responsibility. I think that's synonymous with passion and calling and purpose. You spoke about having different scarves, which is a great way to phrase it when you were talking at the beginning, rather than having different hats. And you've got all these roles, and you've just described the phenomenal work you're doing with children around reading. You're also a scientist, you're a mother, you're an educator. So you've got all these different roles. How do you instill that discipline to keep each of these roles going without letting one consume the other?
Good question. So first of all, these 5 scarves are not all simultaneous, right? I wore the first one, then the second one. So it's not that I put on all 5 and then, oh my God, this is too much. And I think that's an important lesson, that there's time. Time is there. So if you want to do something and it doesn't work, it's okay. So for the first stage of my life, the first 10 years, I got married and I had 4 kids. And I was a school teacher. And it's the best job to be a school teacher when you're a mom, because you go to school with your kids, you have all summer off, you come home early with the kids and so on. So that was the first stage of being just a mom, taking care of my kids. And to me, balancing different roles is actually based on putting your priorities in the right order. And this is, sometimes people forget that people, or especially women, they listen to what society wants of them, rather than them trusting their inner gut feeling of what they think is important at different stages in their lives. So to me, what was important was my kids. I wanted to be there for them. I wanted to see them take their first step. I wanted to see them, learn things at home and so on. So I wanted to be in their lives. I didn't want anyone else to be in their lives, because who's the best person to take care of the child except the parent? So that was the first scarf. And then I went, and in a way, time, when you give time according to your priority and what you think is important, it helps you test whether those ideas you had or those passions are true or not. Are they a whim? Are they a result of a reaction to society and not really your own passion or calling? And so my dream of being a scientist was always there, right? And I actually, before I got married, I finished my master's and I got accepted at the University of Cambridge to do my PhD in molecular biology, but I didn't have the money to go. So that went on the shelf. And as I said, I got married and became a school teacher, but that dream stayed. And my husband saw the ad in the newspaper for a Fulbright grant to do a PhD. So he says, Vena, isn't that your dream? So with 4 kids and the whole family, I applied and we went to the US and did my Fulbright. But again, having the right spouse, the right partner who understands you and who supports you, where you share your dreams. And sometimes it's my turn, sometimes it's his turn. And I think it's that dialogue and support that is very important. But then I did my PhD, came back to Jordan to be a scientist. And I was a scientist, not because it was a job, not because it paid, not because I wanted to be famous, because I love science. Simply that. So I came back. I wasn't on a fast track. I just wanted to enjoy finding the right question, doing, state of the art science. I wasn't going to do any mediocre science. Like, this is like, I wanted to do something that would really add to the scientific knowledge of the world. So I took my time finding the right question. which keeps giving today. We're the world experts. My lab is the world expert on Circassians and Chechens in the whole world. We have a DNA database, and people come and talk to us. And now today, my lab, my work is, we're the world experts on epigenetics of trauma across generations. Again, taking our time to ask the right question. So that took time, setting up the lab, asking the right questions, and then collaborating. So I'm very good at delegating. I'm good at management, so I don't do everything. I don't mind, and I think this is part of being comfortable with ambiguity and being comfortable with people to draw in a whole team and to admit, like, you know what, I don't know this, you know how to do it, so let's work together. And I think that's also a good trait, to delegate, and therefore to do a lot of things without actually spending the time on it, but managing it. That led me to being a social entrepreneur. So being a scientist, and I noticed the children and the reading. And again, that responsibility of stepping outside my lab, outside the university classroom, to use my skills and my knowledge to serve my community. And that's another call, invitation to scientists or other professions that don't just stay within the walls of your profession. You have experience and expertise that can help your community. And imagine if everybody was stepping out and helping their community, how we would solve the problems in our own communities without waiting for somebody else to come and solve them from outside. And that's how I started Wheel of Reading, to help solve a small local problem that ended up being, like a global social movement. But again, all of these are gradual, one flowing into the other, and then delegating, managing teams, and not having this ego that I have to be, or micromanaging stuff. And then lastly, this activism kind of started appearing again. So it's that, I think it's part of being human being. As we evolved as a species to be curious. That's why we survived. And because we're social. Those are two traits that why we survived. And I think so. It's not a hallmark of being a scientist. It's just basic humanity. And I think those traits are that keep on guiding me, exploring, following my curiosity, wanting to help in building those social relations and that teamwork, so that together we can make this world a better place. So, and maybe the last thing on that is, now that I have all 5 scarves kind of running around, right? They flow and ebb depending on the needs. And when one is frustrating and doesn't work, because we all have challenges and things don't work, I focus on the other one, and then you come back fresh. People go take a walk, I go work on something else, and then I come back in and then you things are better. So this going back and forth between roles is very healthy. And it gives you inspiration, because you come in from different perspectives, different disciplines, which is a shout out to interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, for us to really succeed and do better and be healthier, instead of being just stuck and limited in a particular discipline or a particular profession, but to be more lucid. And maybe the last thing about this is, as we grow older, usually the world we grew up in, all of us, is that you choose a profession, you stick to it, and usually you don't change that. And I think what I've done is I've been in and out doing different things, allowing my curiosity to kind of guide me. And I think that's a lesson, that even if you're 60 and you want to change and change your profession or do something else and follow your curiosity, that's okay. That's great. Because what matters is not what society wants or how they will judge you. What matters is your own passion, because that's what will keep you moving, that will inspire you to do quality work, that will help you do it regardless of obstacles and challenges, and that will make you happy at the end of the day, because that's what will wake you up in the morning.
I love what you describe, this kind of almost like tapestry of different experiences, not necessarily planned, but almost this natural journey where there's kind of time and chance and there's balance. And you said something earlier about, letting go, and the fact that you collaborate, you delegate, you work with people. And I think that's a really strong message, especially for maybe young people or people fresh in their careers who see who see who they want to be in front of them, but maybe become a bit overwhelmed around the journey to actually get there. And I'm sure you've had a lot of challenge. I mean, we've spoken about the amazing outcomes of the work you've been doing, but as a practicing Muslim scientist, a woman, I'm sure that you've had, some pushback from whether it's the secular communities or the conservative communities. So in terms of those external pressures and your own doubts and your own, I suppose, maybe even anxiety or exhaustion in some cases, how have you managed that? And which of these pressures, the internal one versus the external one, has been harder to carry for you?
Okay. So I think one way I have coped or faced the challenges, whether internal or external, is that I first of all, well, there's multiple things that retrospectively I learned to analyze and describe, but I didn't do it on purpose. But one of them is that I have a wide imagination. Which comes from reading, I think. Maybe there's genetics to it. I don't know. And because of that wide imagination, if I have an obstacle or a challenge, I break it down. I break it down to little pieces and I deal with them one at a time. And I reward myself every time I finish one of them. And so it's like I make it fun. Bottom line. And I think that's a trait that you could train yourself to do, but then you don't get overwhelmed when you look at the whole thing, and you just think, oh, if I do this and then we'll do the next one and then we'll do the next one and so on. So that's one thing I do without noticing, that I make it fun. I make it fun. The second one is I set up practical, realistic expectations. So, for example, for We Love Reading, when I'm writing the grants, I don't say I'm going to write a grant and then I get upset if I don't get it. No, I say I'm going to write 10 grants and I know I'm only going to get one. So when the first one doesn't happen, it's okay. I'm not upset because that was part of the expectation. The second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one, that's okay. And I think that's a good, it's all about imagination, right? I'm going to lose 9 and that's okay. And I think that also helps cope and keep on moving forward. And I think the third one is I'm very comfortable with ambiguity. And I think that's partly genetic. Some people, I think as a species, we evolved. Some of us are they want closure and everything has to be, in a box. And we need that. Some people have to be like that. Otherwise, the world will fall apart. But we also have on the other end of the spectrum, people who are very comfortable with ambiguity. And uncertainty. And we need those kinds of people. And I think I'm more towards that one. So if it's okay, it doesn't work. That's an incentive to be creative and think of something else. So that's how I look at it. And that gives that positivity, optimism. Actually, my husband says, like, I'm so optimistic that I see an ocean in a drop of water. So that's the, and I think that would, and we know from research that when you're optimistic and you're happy, your immune system is actually better, your health is better, and so on. So I think that's a combination of all that helps me cope with both the inner challenges and the outer challenges. And maybe for the outer challenges, to be a little thick-skinned, and to have confidence in yourself, regardless of what people say. But I think all of that is laced in faith, in that feeling of responsibility that, you know what, I'm going to try. And that feeling of responsibility that if I don't, the world is going to fall apart. And I think that's the biggest drive to sustain those challenges, those people who, ridicule you or tell you it's not going to work. And so, and what helps boost that belief and drive is having a vision, right? That you see it. You see the reality. You actually see it. People don't see it, but you see it. And because you see it, you see that light, then you just keep going and you understand people just don't see the light, and that's okay. They will. Eventually they will. And that's when I always get surprised when it works, because I think, did I trick myself? Nope, it did work.
Fantastic. Hand back to you, Mushtaq.
Yeah. Actually, now it's Ian's turn.
Yeah. Well, I'm a lover of words. I love words. And there's one word that comes to mind as we're talking here, and it's wow. I'm not sure that is a word itself, but that's what comes to mind. I think what comes across for all of us, and I do hope someone out there is listening to this, and we're speaking to a larger audience here. It's not just the four of us speaking and listening to your passion and your peace and your light. It just really comes through. And I hope someone out there who might be listening, who may be perhaps a little discouraged, maybe the grant didn't come through, maybe the application to university didn't pan out as they had hoped it would. Maybe something is troubling them or they have a challenge that they're confronted with. And I hope you listener out there, just the one, if this conversation can give you hope and just an acknowledgement and encouragement, is that we're all in this together, and we're all light keepers in our way. I too, as Yukemi said, love your description of the idea of scars. I think that's so poetic and it's so moving. Um, I love the connections of what you're talking about, how you impact women and their lives. We have International Women's Day, of course. I wish we could have that every day. And I think that seems to be your philosophy. The International Women's Day is not just one day during the year, it's what we do in the days around that one day. And so for me, as I think of your story, and we love reading in particular, you've trained over 7,000 women, and that will just be growing and growing over multiple countries over the years. And when you started, I suspect that that would have been unimaginable that you would reach so many people. So to me, you don't just keep the light, you basically you replicate the flame that gives the light the power. And that's what exemplifies you. And that's what we're learning here. And I hope others are listening to that. So when you get to a point where you have to let go a bit, as we talk about this podcast being a light keeper, eventually the light keeper has to let go and pass it on and let someone else carry that light. And so what do you do in that instance? How do you feel a trust? And you talked about faith, the faith in another person. You talked about the 7,000 women that you've impacted. You get to a point where you say, all right, here's the light, carry it forward. How do you do that? Rather than them just assisting you, how do you empower them and make them feel, okay, you go off in your country, in your community, you got this, do you do it?
Very important question. And actually, it challenges the system that we live in today, your question. And speaking of words, which I love too, because words shape how we think. So we have to be
Yes.
very careful what words we use because they shape and limit or expand how we think. And so starting from the word you used, and I'm going to challenge you here, I do, which the word empowerment. I do disagree with the word empowerment because in it, it's embedded in it means I have power and I'm giving it to somebody. And that is so hierarchical, and it betrays a lack of trust. It betrays like an ego that how could I even think I know better than any woman around me in her own context? I know my context. She knows her context. We are equals.
Yeah.
So, and this realization did not come from the beginning, right? Again, we grew up in a world that is very impacted by Western philosophy. This individualism, one, and this colonial that we know better. We have the right way, whether it's education or science or whatever. And therefore we start thinking that way without realizing those words, those systems affect how we think. So when I started We Love Reading, it was about the children, right? I want to help them fall in love with reading. And it was me helping them fall in love with reading. And then after 3 years of boiling it down to the simplest formula, kind of like chemistry or math, I had this formula where somebody reads aloud to the children in their neighborhood, in their native language, in the local context. That was it. It was a bare bones framework. And that's why it spread, because it's not sophisticated, it's not complicated. And on one hand, so it's like nature, it's like DNA, but at the same time, it celebrates the diversity of the person picking it up and doing it because they speak their own language, they choose their own space, they choose how to do it. So they have total ownership and sovereignty on the program itself. And actually, nobody knows about us. That was the philosophy of We Love Reading. We are in the background. Mary, Sarah, even John, because we have men, not just women, just the majority are women, get all the credit from their community as a result of them reading aloud to the children. And this kind of approach, this strategy, this framework, of course, happened very organically. I didn't say I'm going to design this from the beginning. I was just doing what I thought was right. But because of that organic problem solving, we had the right formula, so to speak. And then what we realized later is it wasn't about just the children. And this was pointed out not by me, by somebody else looking at the program saying, Rana, your program is not just about children falling in love with reading. All your adults and youth, we call them ambassadors, who are reading aloud to the children, are leaders in their own right, in their own communities, because they've gone, what they've shared with us, that they went beyond solving their own problems, right? Not just the reading problem, water problem, education problem, poverty problem, whatever. So they became leaders in their community. And that's what led us to shift our mission from children falling in love with reading to changing mindsets through reading, to nurture change makers. And that word nurture, first it was empower and create. No. And then we were, no, who are we to create or empower? All we do, this is basic human innate capacity that is present in every human being. All we do is nurture it through reading. That's all. But it will flourish by itself. And that is so important in the language and in the philosophy of how any human being should interact with other human beings, because it's based on trust. So from that was our philosophy. So, and that's how We Love Reading spread, because it is so organic and innate, and everybody can see themselves in being an ambassador and owning it. So I'll share a story. So one of the ambassadors was reading in a small town in the north part of Jordan. And she not just reading for her kids, her neighborhood, the neighboring village, the schools, like she was a star. So a local newspaper interviewed her. And she said, yes, I started We Love Reading, and I do this and this and this and this. So my team said, how could she say that she started We Love Reading? And I said, no, that is exactly the result that we want. If she believes, which rightly so, that she started We Love Reading, she will never stop. And isn't that what we want? Who cares who started it? Who cares who owns it? And that is the spirit of We Love Reading. That's why first I fell into the trap of entrepreneurship, which is an extension of capitalism. First, they said, "Oh, Rana, how are you going to get enough money to keep this going? How much are you growing? It's all about how much am I growing? My organization. How many employees do I have? How many millions do I have my budget?" And it put me on that treadmill of trying to, oh yeah, I got to figure that out. But it felt alien. It felt it was like putting a square in a circle, like something didn't fit. And it really hit me when we created a whole licensing model for a business model. And then I called up somebody from Algeria. He called me up. He said, we're in Algeria. We want to implement We Love Reading in the west part of Algeria. And I said, oh, yeah, okay. Here's the licensing model. You pay us a fee and you can actually implement it. He said, but we don't have money. And I said, don't worry. I'll give you a template. You can write a grant and you can get money and then you can pay me. And he said, but in Algeria, we don't have funders and foundations like you guys. And that's when it's like he slapped me on the face. And I said, oh my God, what have I become? I've become this capitalistic person thinking about the money and forgetting about the real reason this whole thing started. But this was all because of all the funders, grants, how you write it, the awards. They put you in that kind of path. And that's when I stopped. I stepped back and I said, no, We Love Reading is free. Anybody can use it for any reason. I had registered the logo as a trademark in the US and Europe. I didn't renew it, so it's off. And this is free. And when I made it free, oh my God, it was like the whole world opened up. And then people started wanting to work. The movement even moved more. And this is contrary to the advice, right? Where's your business model? How is your organization growing? And I started working to degrow. So my organization today has only maybe 1.5 employees from a bigger, much, and our budget is getting smaller and smaller and smaller because we put the training online in multiple languages, and that's where AI comes in to help. and then people through word of mouth, and it's spreading and it's spreading. And this is why I wrote a book called Reimagining Systems Change. How can we we don't want to keep, because what happens in social entrepreneurship is you take the business model and you start patching it to fix it, and it doesn't work. You need to build an alternative system that is based on values, and not the capitalistic system that wants to make money, 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 money without having values. And that's another creative, innovative call to what does that look like. And I use We Love Reading as an example of how we followed the rules that were prescribed, and very successfully, but it didn't feel right. So to your question, I think letting go of We Love Reading. So today we celebrated, actually this year, 20 years of We Love Reading. So I started in February 2006, and today it's 2026. And
Nice.
the metaphor I came up with is a supernova. Speaking of light. So to me, We Love Reading is like a supernova, right? It's a star that grows and grows and grows until it reaches its maturity, and then it explodes in a supernova. So We Love Reading this year, 20 years, has exploded into a supernova where the light of the supernova will keep shining billions of years in the future in every human being who starts We Love Reading in their own neighborhood. And now I'm working on my new project. This letting go of We Love Reading in this way is not easy, to your question, but it's about you pass on the light in a supernova explosion, and now there's time and space and learning and wisdom to start a new endeavor in a whole different way that I'm very, very excited about.
Thank you. Well, congratulations, 20 years. That's extraordinary. Yeah. I love that. I feel like if we could narrow it down to a couple of specific people, if you think about individuals that you're turning, who are the all-stars that come to mind, or individuals that come to mind that you've mentored that are out there carrying the light, individuals perhaps that you're most proud of? I'm sure you have so many that come to mind as you're pondering that. I love the idea of nurturing and working in nature to nurture. And in fact, I just published a column about this, working in the garden. And Yakemi will know that I took in the autumn, I was planting bulbs and I was writing names of people on the bulbs themselves, of places and people that I care about, people that I love, that I admire, that really have meant something for me. And I literally wrote their names on the roots and then placed them in the soil, and did so many of them around my garden. And now in the springtime, they've come up and blossomed, and I knew where I planted them. So, and not to single out Yakemi here, but I had planted one for Yakemi and knew exactly where I had planted it. So it's, for me, you are planting the seeds, you are cultivating individuals, encouraging individuals. Are there specific people that come to mind, or would you prefer not to single anyone out? Or
Yeah, well, first, I love your idea of planting the bulbs with the names of people.
it was
I
fun.
love that.
I enjoyed it.
That's a great idea. I love it.
You may get one next year.
Thank you. For me, I don't have one special, or any like a few special persons. Every human being who has, because we're talking about We Love Reading, but every human being I've interacted with, they are very special. And they have carried on much more than I would have ever imagined, because they are special. And every human being, to me, is special. I believe that as a humanity, every human is very different from everybody else because their DNA is different. Even if you have identical twins, their epigenetics will make one slightly different than the other. And therefore, every human being is new to this world and has something to offer that we can learn from each other. So to me, all of them, whether they took We Love Reading and became a We Love Reading ambassador or not, but for the We Love Reading ambassadors, each one has developed her own or his own initiative in their own neighborhood, and it's amazing. And so each one of them inspires me in a different way, and therefore I cannot say one different than the other. They are all amazing, and I would love to know each one of them, because every now and then, like every week, we get an email or a message on social media.
Mm.
We just recently got this message from a person from South Africa. He has committed by himself to train 100 Wheel of Reading ambassadors. He had trained already 60, and he was moving forward. And actually, just yesterday, he sent me a message on WhatsApp that now he has trained 130. I don't know this guy. I've never met him. I probably will never meet him. Nobody paid him anything. He has taken Wheel of Reading and so on. So we have all these stories that come back. And I'm sure there are many more that I don't know about, because Wheel of Reading is that supernova that keeps giving. Because this guy Muhammad from South Africa, those 130 will tell others and others and others, and that's the domino effect, the snowball effect.
Beautiful.
And I'm so proud of them, and I am humbled by them because I learned so much from them.
That's so beautiful. Before I turn it back to you, Mushtaq, just to sort of close out, I'd say that one of the great quotes, one of my heroes is Dr. Martin Luther King. And he, of course, was a light keeper in his moment of time. He was an extraordinary individual. He talked about faith, as you mentioned, your faith, the importance of faith, and the idea that we take the first step without seeing the whole staircase. And I love that quote from him. But as I give that quote, I want to honor Coretta Scott King, because Coretta Scott King is an individual that is unheralded in my mind. She is a woman who carried the flame, who carried the faith, who carried the work that Dr. King was shouldering. And I so admire her. And just as I complete my thought here and listening to you, I admire people who carry the flame after the history has been written, maybe about one person. There are so many individuals involved. So we need to put a little flame and a light on Coretta Scott King. So thank you so much for your example and what you do. We're all grateful for you. Mushtaq.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I was really in awe, and I'm so inspired with everything that you've said, and to the importance of words, because I think we are all, we know that the importance of that. I picked this bit that you've just said, when you made it free, like free of charge, you yourself became free, like in freedom. And I think that is such a powerful thing, because we when we were preparing for this light cast, we were really looking for people who are quietly keeping the world together, while probably our official leaders are not necessarily doing that work. And I was really amazed by when you said, you felt a sense of responsibility that if you don't do it, the world will fall apart. And this is such a reassuring word, that this is exactly the kind of leader we are looking for, to help them spread the light, but for us to benefit from that light and be inspired by it. My last question to you is, if you could have one idea that you could spark in the mind of a young person or a group of young people, what would that idea be? What would that spark that you would leave these youth with?
Well, because the humans are diverse and there's nobody like anybody else, every human will have a different spark. So the idea is not about a particular specific spark. The idea is how to support, again, I'm trying to choose my words very carefully, to nurture that spark in every human being. To me, that's the key. That's the recipe. That's the ingredient. So what I would want is to encourage everybody to believe in themselves, have confidence that you are special, you are unique, you have something that is fantastic, and that you can't let the world not know about what you're doing. You can't, you have a responsibility to use what you know and what you have in terms of skills to help solve the challenges that you face and every human being faces around the globe. And to start small. You don't have to think big. You don't have to impress people. You don't have to save the world. Just think, what can you do today? And that's it. If you just think of what you can do today, then the magic will happen. And it's actually the chaos theory in physics, right? It's when a butterfly flutters its wings in one part of the world, it moves the air a centimeter, very small. but it results in a hurricane beyond time and space, beyond that way you can imagine. So just be that butterfly. That would be my advice to and then for all these little sparks, then slowly the change will grow and spread all over the world and continue to future generations.
Fantastic.
Right.
So be that butterfly. That is the spark that we would like to leave our audience with. Rana, thank you very much. You've inspired us, and we wish you all the best with your work. And hopefully we can meet again and meet face to face and hear more about the great work that you and the other light keepers that you have been inspiring doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to learn about all the other light keepers and everybody as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.